So this is Dr. Kavita Singh, Associate Professor in Department of Civil Engineering in Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. So today we are going to discuss what we call as types of databases. So I hope you remember in the previous lectures we have discussed about database management system in GIS. So what is database management system? How the database works? So what is the purpose of database? So database management system, it is required for any kind of software or computer setup or any kind of programming, because if you want to do any query, we need the database to save or store all types of data. So in GIS, we need this database because of storing the spatial and non-spatial data. So if you want to do any query, or if you want to get any results, or if you want to get any output of that particular data, the data should be stored in the database. So now we have discussed in the previous lecture about the database management system. Today we'll be learning about the different types of databases, what it has, how it stores the information. That all we'll learn today. So let us start with the contents. So we have in the contents like types of databases, centralized databases, advantages of centralized database, disadvantages of centralized database, distributed database, relational databases, NoSQL database, cloud database, object-oriented databases, hierarchical database, and network database. So we are having this many databases which will help the data to be stored in the database, and later whenever the retrieval is required, whenever a query is given, it will give the results out of that. Okay. So let us start with the first line, like types of databases. So there are various types of databases which are used for storing different varieties of data. So we have different varieties of data. When it comes to GIS, we have spatial, non-spatial, we have raster, we have vector. So these are all types of data which to be stored in GIS. Once it is stored in the GIS, then only we are able to get the result or output of that particular data. So the types of data we have here is centralized database, distributed database, NoSQL database, cloud database, relational database, network database, object-oriented database, hierarchical database. So these all we are going to discuss one by one. So let us start with the centralized database. So centralized database, as I said, database is the database is for the storing of the information, how much information is stored, and further it is accessed to the different locations. That is called as database. So when you are talking about the centralized database, we have, it is a type of database that stores the data at a centralized database system. So it's like a common server will be there where the data will be saved, and from there it is distributed to the other sources. So it comforts the users to access the stored data and from different locations through the several applications. So once the data is centralized, all the data will be fed in a system where it stores the huge amount of data. From there, based on the application part, it is distributed to the different locations. So these applications contain the authentication process to let users access the data securely. Now, advantages of centralized database. It has decreased the risk of data management. So because it is a centralized database, so it has decreased the risk of the data management. That is, manipulation of the data will not affect the core data. So data consistency is maintained as it manages the data in a central repository. So it provides better data quality, which enables the organizations to establish the data standards. It is a less costly because fewer vendors are required to handle the data sets. Now, what are the disadvantages? If we see what are the disadvantages of the centralized database? The size of the centralized database is large, so which increases the response time for fetching the data. So what the major disadvantage of the centralized database is? The size of the database is large because it is having a huge amount of data. It is having from all the sources, all the departments, it has the data, which increases the time response. So when you just click a query, so what happens? The time taking to fetch the data, it will take more. So for example, in 1 second it has to open, it will take maybe 5 seconds or 10 seconds, because the load on the server will be more. That's the reason the fetching of the data will be more. So it will take the increased response of the data will be more. That is the disadvantage of the centralized, because all the huge amount of data is centralized in the common server. That's the problem. So it is not easy to update such an extensive database system. And if any server failure occurs, so by chance or by bad luck, if any say failure occurs, so the entire data will be lost, and which could be the huge loss for the that particular organization, and it can be a problem to all the employees. So this is the problem due to this centralized database. Because of the huge amount of data, large amount of data, the fetching problem is there, and sometimes the system may stuck due to the huge amount of data. The load will be more on the server, and the failure occurs, the entire data will be lost, and it can give you the huge loss. Now, distributed database. So we have studied about, we have learned about the centralized. Now we're learning about the distributed database. So unlike a centralized database system, in distributed system, data is distributed among different database systems of an organization. So these database systems are connected via communication links. Such as links help the end users to access the data easily. Now, distributed is like, it's a data which is distributed to the different database system of an organizations. The organizations will be different, and it will be managed by the different organizations. So all the information will not be there in a centralized database. Okay. So these database systems are connected via the communication. Through communication links, the data is connected to the main server. Such links help the end users to access the data easily. Now, examples of distributed database are like Apache, HBase, Ignite, etc. Now, distributed database, we have homogeneous database and we have heterogeneous database. We have two types of distributed database. One is homogeneous, the other one is heterogeneous. So let us understand what is homogeneous database. So those database systems which execute on the same operating system. Homogeneous means it will execute on the same operating system and use the same application process. So it has the same system. It has the same system and it has the same application. Okay, application in the same system it has, and process to carry the same hardware devices. So it has the same system and execute in the same operating system, as well as it carries in the same hardware device. So heterogeneous DBP, what is heterogeneous database? Those database systems which execute on different operating systems, under different application processes and carries the different hardware devices. Now, if you see about the heterogeneous, it has those data which execute in the different operating system, and it has a different application, and it has a carries from the different hardware devices. So this is the two types of database of distributed database system, heterogeneous and homogeneous. Now, relational database. So what is relational database? When you talk about the relational database, this database is based on the relational data model, which stores data in form of rows and columns and together forms a table. So these type of databases, when you see, it's like a data model which stores here the data which is stored in this type of databases are it is in the form of either rows or either in the form of the columns or attributes, and together forms a table. So for column and row, together it forms a table. So a relational databases uses SQL for storing, manipulating as well as maintaining the data. The relational database uses the SQL for storing, manipulating as well as and maintaining the data. Each table in the database carries a key that makes the data unique from the others. Now, examples of relational database are MySQL. Now, properties of relational database. What are the properties of relational database? There are following four commonly known properties of a relational model known as ACID. Okay, so there are four properties here of the relational database. What we call it as ACID. So A for A means atomicity, C for consistency, and if you see I means isolation, and D means durability. So these four types of properties we have in this relational database. Now let us understand what is A means atomicity. So this ensures the data operation will complete either with success or with failure. So this will ensure the data should be completed. It ensures the data operation should be completed. So it should show you the results, either it is a success one or either it is a failure one. So it will finally at the end it will show you the results. Okay, so it follows the all or nothing strategy. For example, a transaction will either be committed or will be aborted. So some information, like if you put something in the machine, it has to show either the data is failure, either data is a success. So this type of property is called as atomicity. Okay, atomicity of the relational database. Now if we talk about the C means consistency. What is consistency? If we perform any operation over the data, its value before and after operation should be preserved. So if we perform any operation over the data, its value before and after the operation should be preserved. For example, the account balance before and after the transaction should be correct. That is, it should be remain conserved. So this will tell you about the operation, it will tell you the value and after the operation should be preserved. So in example, for if you want to check the transaction account balance, it will show you the why the data is remains conserved, why it will show you the balance before and after transaction should be correct, and that is it should be remain conserved. I means isolation. So there can be a concurrent uses for accessing data at the same time from the databases. So thus isolation between the data should be remain isolated. For example, when multiple transaction occurs at the same time, so one transaction effects should not be visible to the other transaction in the databases. Now D means durability. So it ensures that once it completes the operation and commits the data changes should remain permanent. So durability is like it ensures you that when it is completing its operations, commits the data changes should remain permanent. There should not be furthermore changes in that. No SQL database. Next is no SQL database, or it is also known as not only SQL. So non-SQL or not only SQL is a type of database that is used for storing a wide range of data sets. It is used for the storing a wide range of data sets, enables the storage and querying of data outside the traditional structures found in relational databases. So it is not a relational database as it stores data only in tabular form, but in several different ways. So it will help you to show you the data neither in not a relational database, and it also helps the data to store only in the tabular form but in the several different ways. So it came into existence when the demand for the building modern applications increased. So thus NoSQL presented in a wide variety of database technology in the response to the demands. Now here we can further divide NoSQL database into following four types. So there are four types of non-SQL databases. So what are the four types of non-SQL databases we have here? Key value storage, we have graph databases, we have wide column stores, document oriented database. These are the four types of non-SQL or not SQL databases types. So let us understand what is this key value storage. So it is the simplest type of database storage where it stores every single item as a key. So as a key means or attribute name holding its value together. So it's a simplest type of database. We can say key value storage is the simplest type of database storage. It stores the data, every single item as a key and holding its value together. Now document oriented database, when you talk about the document oriented database, a type of database used to store data as JSON-like document, and it helps the developers in storing data by using the same document model format using the application code. Now comes to graph databases. So what is a graph database? It is a use for storing vast amounts of data in a graph-like structure. So all the data will be stored in a graph-like structure. So in the form of graph only, all the information will be saved. So most commonly social networking websites use the graph database. Wide column stores, it is similar to data represented in the relational databases. So wide column stores are similar to the data which is represented in the relational databases. Here data is stored in large columns together instead of storing in the rows. So data always it is stored in the form of a graph, or it is stored the large amount of data is stored in the large column instead of storing in the rows. This is about the wide column stores. Now coming to the cloud database. So this kind of database, it's a storage database where a type of database where data is stored in a virtual environment. So the data will be storing in a virtual environment and executes over the cloud computing platform. So always the data is stored in the virtual environment and the cloud computing platform. So it provides the users with various cloud computing services like SaaS and etc. for accessing the database. So there are numerous cloud platforms, but the best options are Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud SQL, etc. So these are the virtual environment databases where the data are saved virtually in the environments. Next is object-oriented databases. So the type of database that uses the object-based data model approach for storing the data in the database system. So this type of database that uses the object-based data and it approaches for the storing data in a database system. So the data which is represented and stored as objects which are similar to the objects used in the object-oriented programming languages. So object-oriented databases, it's a type of databases which is stored as an object-based data model. Okay, and it stores in the storing data in the database system. Next is hierarchical databases. So it is a type of database that stores the data in the form of parent-children relationship nodes. So it has a hierarchy, like when you're talking about hierarchy, so first is like when you talk about parent-children relationship means father and mother, and then we have children. Okay, let us say C1, here C2, here C4, C5, like this. It will be like a flow chart or hierarchy from the top to the bottom. It will start, and here it organizes the data in the tree-like structure. Always it will be like a tree-like structure in the format. So suppose for example, this is the tree-like structure. It has a root here. So it's a reverse tree-like structure, we can say. Root here, in the root you have level 1, in the root you have level 2. Now in level 1 you have level 1.1, level 1.2, right? Now here level 2 you have 2.1 and 2.2. Like that, if you want to go more further, so level 1.1 will be level 1.1.1. Okay, here you can say level 1.2.1. So here level 2.1 to 2.1.1, and further if you go more deeper, you may get level 2.2.1. So this is how the tree-like structure will be. So it will be forwarded right from the root to the next level of the we can say hierarchy. So from root to the level 1, or the basics will start from the root, like that the parent and children like structure. So here the head of the family will be there. Then you can see in the family how many members are there. That all will be followed by the flowchart. Okay. Now we are talking about network databases. So it is the database that typically follow the network data model. So it follows the network data model. So what is a network data model? Here the representation of the data is in the form of nodes which is connected via links between them. When you see the networking, it's like a connection of the nodes. So one node, two node, three nodes, like this, the network will be connected to each other. Okay, so typically follow the network data model. Here representation of the data, it is in form of nodes connected via links between them. So node connected via links between them. So unlike the hierarchical databases, it allows each record to have multiple children in parent nodes to form a generalized graph structure. So this is about the hierarchy network databases, which will follow the data from node to the structure. Okay, it will follow the network data model and representation of the data in the form of nodes connected via the links between them. So unlike the hierarchical database, it also allows each record to have a multiple parent and node to form a generalized graph structure. Okay, so these were the types of databases we have learned today. So the database is basically saved for it is used for the storing the lot of information in the database system, because the information is saved based on the information only. It is decided to just get to know the total results. Whenever the results are required, it will help us to get the query and it will help us to give us the answer once the data is stored in the databases. So these are the different types of databases which we use in the software applications. So based on the requirement, like in GIS also we use that this type of databases for storing this huge amount of data, like vector, raster, spatial, non-spatial data. So once the data is stored, the manipulation and the query or the analysis is easy when the data is stored in the database management system. So these were the types of the databases. So, and just you can go through these references for finding out the more information about this database types of the databases in GIS or any other application fields. Okay, so that's all for today. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.